So I'm Jess and I work in North Tyneside as a freelance artist. I mostly do textiles, but I've been doing a lot of work with local arts organisations on creative journaling over the past couple of years in particular. And I think because it's quite a small scale project and it's quite personal and unique to each person, it sort of works quite well in this little setup because you can work in a little comfy space of your own, but you can kind of still have a chat with people and you can still obviously get guidance from someone like myself if I'm running a prompt. So I think if anyone hasn't done creative journaling before, what I would say is that I can only describe it as being a bit of a mixture between a sketchbook and a diary. You know, it can be filled with recordings of your day, sort of little diary entries or notes, interesting things that you might have noticed that you want to write down. It could be collected papers and tickets that you've perhaps found, seasonal things as well, if you pick up flower heads or fallen leaves in autumn, for example. It can be a real record of just daily life, but it's quite a nice way if you've got a little corner of a room and a little space where you can just grab half an hour with a cup of tea and your creative journal. Sometimes it can be just a nice little bit of me time. So I thought I'd start today. I'm going to flip my screen round and just really quickly just show you some of my creative journals that I've been doing. I make junk journals out of scrap papers, cereal box covers. The reason I use the term junk journaling is because it uses up bits of paper that we're not too precious about. And I sometimes think when we get a brand new shiny white sketchbook with really pristine pages, we sort of get the sketchbook fear and it's a bit more difficult to get started. So I think when you've got a book where there's something already on the page, it feels a little bit easier to kind of cover it in paint, not maybe be too precious about it, not worry too much about the outcome. Some of these prompts here respond to the seasons. This was a really summery season, how you feel when the sun comes out again after the long winter. There's a bit of an autumnal prompt there. There's a bit of a summery prompt here as well, where it's sort of about going outside and thinking about the things you can hear and see. We've got recipes, interesting recipes that you might like and want to record. Identity cairns as well there, which is another video that's been recorded. That's actually on the Helix Arts site if ever you wanted to check in on that prompt. But you can see there's lots of different things going on in the background here. It's quite messy, it's quite rough and ready. The pages are all different sizes, but I think that's the thing that makes it easier to just sort of dive into, because it's not, like I say, it's not this really lovely pristine sketchbook that you might worry about getting wrong. Every journal is unique to you. It's not something that anybody else has to see. It's not something that has to be shared with anybody else. It can be really personal and private. So I think again that really helps if you think that you don't have to show it, sort of the whole thing to anybody. So you can kind of get creative, get messy in there. You can write things down, stick things in that you've seen on your days. It's just a nice way to record your days and respond to things around you. I've done some in altered books as well, so old reading books that have become journals. So you use the text on the page as a prompt for some of the things that you stick onto the page. A little tip as well for a journal is don't start on the first page. I think when you open up a book and start the first page, you always want to sort of make it look really great because it's the first thing you see when you open the book. But if you just turn a few pages in and start in the middle and just work either side of that, it kind of just seems to take the pressure off a little bit. So that's a little top tip about getting started. But because there are so many different ways to do creative journaling and it can be so personal, that can be quite thrilling for some people because you can literally do anything. But equally, that can also be a little bit terrifying because sometimes when you can do anything, it's really hard to know where to get started. And that's where prompts come in and they're really handy. The prompt for today's session is a letter to myself. But I thought just to get started off today, we could do a little bit of a warm-up. You'll notice on a lot of my journal pages, I don't go straight onto the page. I put a bit of a background down first. So something like this one, for instance, you can see there's lots of sort of colour just swished around. You don't have to have an idea as such about what you're going to do on the page when you put the ground down. Sometimes it's just quite a nice warm-up activity to kind of make marks on a page without too much thought. And you can also, you know, while you're sort of painting on the page, you can be thinking about the prompt for today, which is a letter to myself, and how you might respond to that initially without any input from me. So I really like to use things that you would find every day in your house when you do journaling. So I use a lot of household emulsion. when I want to put a ground down in my book. I often get asked if this is gesso. It's just Dulux. I go into the shed with a jam jar and a spoon, and I've used that a lot in my sketchbooks because it knocks back any text that you might have in the background. So if I was working on something like an old book page and you put emulsion over it, it kind of pushes the print back. You can see it a little bit, but it gives you a matte surface to work on. So that's one of those really handy things to have. Simple things like having pen, pencil, paintbrush, scissors, glue, couple of magazines nearby, and something to add colour is great, and that could be coloured pencils, it could be paints. I have like a little tray of oil pastels I like to go into and sort of scrub into my work. They hang onto the emulsion backgrounds really well. And I also have my little treat as my little pot of watercolour paints as well, and these ones are great because they're sort of like travel sets. So if you're out and about with your journal, they sort of twist off and stack and restack, but you can just unscrew them and scatter them around your desk, and each palette has a different colour on it. So they are really lovely paints to work with, just to have some watercolours nearby. So to start off with, I might do something like paint some emulsion on, just get like an old piece of cardboard, cereal card or an old points card from the supermarket, and you can scrape paint on your pages just to try and put a bit of a background down. So you can scrape emulsion onto paper. And if you paint some bubble wrap, this is just the sort of thing if you've got Amazon boxes and things coming through the post, if you put a bit of emulsion onto bubble wrap or scrunched up newspaper textures, you can actually do really simple printing in your book as well, which is also nice for background. So I'm just going to gently press that painted bubble wrap down onto the paper, peel it back, and you can get some interesting printed textures from that, which again can just be a nice ground to start on. And you can also think about adding a bit of colour. So you could just try adding some colour onto some pages. And it seems almost a bit slapdash, but it is just about playing. It's about giving yourself that permission to just make a bit of a mess and not worry too much about what's going to be on the sketchbook page later on. You might collage something onto this. You might stick down a ticket from somewhere you've been to, or something you've seen, and then you might write about it over the top. But if you've got these little interesting pages already made in your book, and you've got something to work on top of instead of having to start from a blank page upwards every time you open your book up. And as I say, this is a nice way for just 10 minutes at the start, just to have a little bit of a warm-up. If you've got any little ink pads that you use for craft, if you turn them upside down, you can actually use them to add colour onto your page in quite a nice subtle way. And you can just sort of dab it and scrub it around, and you can see there how it can very quickly just add a little bit of shade. If you were doing this, just sort of in your own time, you might find that having a hairdryer nearby is also helpful, because you can, in a few seconds, you can dry a page off, flip it over, and then start doing something on the next one. So just thinking a little bit about the prompt, first of all. The idea was it's a letter to myself, and sometimes a prompt can be, as I said before, something as simple as circles, and it can be just a nice drawing prompt, really mindful, you don't have to think about much, and sometimes you can have prompts where you can think about sort of responding a little bit more personally. So this one, a letter to myself, is thinking about if you could write a letter to yourself, maybe it's your present self, maybe you could imagine that your future self is writing a letter to yourself. What sort of advice might you give yourself? What might you remind yourself of? Would you offer yourself any gentle words of encouragement? Mine is often always about just don't overthink things, remember to have rest. So it's those kind of gentle reminders that maybe in the busyness of every day that we sort of forget about. So it's a little reminder to yourself about, sort of go gently, and the bits of advice you'd like to remind yourself of every now and again. So I've got like a little photograph of a drawing I did. I've got little stamps around here as well, just because it's on the theme of a letter. And you can see when I do text, I might write the prompt on the page, but I'll play around with text quite a lot. So sometimes it's handwritten, sometimes I use alphabet stamps. And what I've actually done here, I was fortunate for this page in my junk journal that it was made up of an envelope, so I had like a little flap, and I could write on a piece of paper the letter to myself. And on this other page, I actually made an envelope as well, which I'm just going to go through very quickly, and it's dead simple. I made this one out of a page from an old reading book. But again, it means you can glue like a little pocket into your journal, and that's quite nice as well, because if you are collecting things daily or and you want to just put something somewhere in your journal, but you don't really need it to be on show, little pockets are a great way to store these extra bits and pieces. So to start this one up, I'm going to use the page that I started scraping some emulsion on before. I've just got a little old piece of map page to make an envelope out of, and if you just cut like an oblong of paper and fold it not quite in half, so you can create a little flap that folds down, and you can cut that into an envelope shape as well if you want. And just glue down either side just to create the pocket, and then we'll glue that into the sketchbook. And I quite like to put things over the top. I always put these in first, and then I can kind of add more things on top of it as well. Actually, I cut this big flower out from a magazine as well, so I think I'm going to tuck that behind there. I think my formula, if you like, if I get a bit stuck with what to do on a journal page, my go-to formula tends to be lay a base, add an image, and then add some text on top. And you can probably see that in these ones here. I've got a base where I've played around with paint, scraped it around. I've got a main image, and then I add text on top. I'll very quickly glue this envelope in, just so I can show you how I then add more paint over the top before I add text. So I'm going to put my little pocket down here. And I like this flower that I've got from a magazine, but sometimes when you use magazine imagery, it can be quite bright and glossy. So again, a little bit of household emulsion is a great way just to almost blend it into the background a little bit and just take that sheen off. And again, if you've got a little bit of emulsion on it, you can then draw and write and stamp on top of it, because the chalkiness of the emulsion sort of gives it like a little bit of a key. So when I started putting in things like don't worry, I stamped it in, but then I've also written the same words don't worry over and over again here, just in biro. But by layering up those different bits of text, you get quite an interesting effect using lots of different kinds of text. And then, as I say, if you wanted to have a little think about what you might write for a letter to myself, you can pop that into your pocket as well. I've got my little ink pad and dotted around the edges just to kind of take the plain, just that plainness of the single brown shade away. And I've just torn up some little book pages as well and added some little stamps, because I'm just a bit of a collector of old paper, so I always have little things like that to hand. I think the more you journal and the more you start acting like a bit of a creative journal sponge, and you'll see things and just start collecting like interesting papers, or nice tissues or wrapping papers, interesting paper doilies, things that come through the post. I have a little stacky storage system, so I've just pulled one of the drawers out today, and when I find interesting bits of paper, I just put them all in here, and I can have a little rummage whenever I've got the book out. But because it's only small, it's like I don't spend ages fiddling about. I've got like a limited amount of things to look through, so it kind of means I can just get started quite quickly. But yeah, and then I've just gone again. I've got my stamps there. I've put rest is productive. Don't feel guilty about rest, but I've sort of done it in pencil and then some fine liner as well as the stamps. So the main things I'm trying to get across I've done in really big bold letters, and then I've just tried to almost make the rest of the writing a little bbit decorative by repeating it and layering it a little bit. Bring that back a little bit. So, and then I've got my pocket as well where I can put something in. So you can see quite quickly how you can build it up. But again, as I say, if you've got a double page, work across the double page, and it just gives you more space to play really. Have you got yours there, Shauna? Well, that's really nice. It's like you've written notes to yourself on different parts of the page. Oh, and a second page as well. Awesome. Don't be so hard on yourself. That's a really nice message, yeah. Would anybody else like to share anything that they've started working on today? Or there's no pressure, so just if you wanted to.
I don't mind doing.
Oh, thanks, Lucinda. Thanks, Lucinda. We'll just, if you just hold it up, I'll take a screenshot of just the page. Oh, that's lovely. Health and well-being, look after yourself. Yeah, I love that you've got it next to sort of really blooming flowers as well.
Yeah, and down here it just says self-care, just in the...
Nice, yeah.
I spent ages trying to find the word self.
Oh, did you? Were you cutting it out of magazines and things, is that? Yeah, spend ages hunting for it.
Yeah, but I'm just working in a black sketchbook.
Oh, right.
And my white pen anywhere. And and couldn't find any of my paints. So I just did this paint, but I hadn't put anything on there, so I just went and put some paint cuts down on it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and keep up with it.
Yeah.
And I just, I liked your idea of using the ink pad, so I just went and used an ink pad and to do that. But yeah, thank you.
It looks really nice. It looks like, because I'd wondered if you painted the background because it's got like little hints of green on it. It works really well on the dark background. I like that black sketchbook. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's like a bit different.
Ink pad, well, kind of like turquoisey green colour.
Yeah, you can really see it in the light when you sort of hold it up to the camera. It's great. Oh, I like it. It's nice to see different books. I do love seeing different sketchbooks, and I always think they hold all the interesting stuff, little books. Nice to see. Thanks for sharing it. It's really nice.
Thank you.
I'll just share what I've done in mine. That's all right.
Oh, that's lovely, Penny.
It's various bits and pieces from my magazine, but also stuff that I've done previously that I've not had use for. It'd be nice to have that. And I really like this little envelope idea.
Yeah.
It's really cute.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? And
I haven't got to actually writing anything. I've got something in there, but I've got to get around to that.
Yeah. No, it's nice to take your time with it, isn't it? And it's lovely because those little pockets can be used on lots of different pages if you've got sort of collected things from, visits or trips out, or, it's just nice to have them collected in a little place.
I did this. It's a work in progress, as you can see. There's my threads still coming out.
Oh, you're still doing those as well?
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to make. It says, "Be a mother to you. Take care of yourself."
That's
you
nice,
met her.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to raise the word care with the sewing.
Mhm.
Kind of. But it's a bit tricky because the paper is still a bit wet and still a bit gluey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to remember, isn't it? Especially if you're looking after other people as well. It's not to forget to look after yourself. But it's been really lovely working with you all again. It's been nice and chilled. Thanks, guys. Take care. See you again sometime.
Bye. See ya.